You know what I want to talk to you about, B? Is we were talking about this earlier with the Bryce Mitchell stuff. I talked a little bit on the Schaub show. With the Bryce Mitchell stuff, and again, I keep saying this, people are like, oh, whatever. I'm not making excuses for him, but he's a product of the current climate and algorithm of social media.
There you fucking go.
And then also when it comes to like the gay stuff, like remember, he grew up very religious, so he's around like-minded people. This isn't an excuse for him.
No.
I'm saying when people are like, he's crazy, this kid's, you know, a neo-Nazi, he's not crazy. He's if you're surrounded by that, and that's your circle.
He's been indoctrinated in the wrong information.
Yes,
and I can't.
He doesn't have a background. He doesn't have a background in history. He doesn't know World War I. He doesn't know World War II. He has no context.
No.
So he sees all this stuff, and it's affirming. Maybe his buddy from high school told him. And he's like, "Oh man."
I'm so glad that you're bringing this up, because I think you're so right. Bryce Mitchell is indicative of a much larger problem.
Yep.
It's young people that are doing, quote unquote, their own research. The reason you study scholarship, you go to a university, even though I know universities teach a lot of shit, but let me tell you, the historians in universities who write books and come to conclusions, the way you do this, and I'm going to give, is that when you're a historian, what you do is you read the original archives, the records. You go to the Soviet archives, you read them in Russian. You go to the German archives. Right? The Germans were very specific record keepers. You read the diaries of the GIs that liberated those camps. Yep. You look at every piece of film. You look at the train ledgers. You look at all of that stuff.
They don't make numbers up.
No, they don't. You then go, well, if they used Zyklon B, which was Zyklon A, but then it was they took Zyklon A was a bug spray. It was I believe, and then they took the scent out of it, and it was Zyklon B. But Fritz Haber invented it. You then look at the amount. You go back and say, where did the supply chain go from? So as a historian, you actually go back and look at the origin. It's such dusty work, but you go, how many canisters? How many, where is this? How did they get this there? What were the trains? What did the trains say the cargo was?
And Bryce isn't, he doesn't have that access to that information.
Well, because he's not a historian or a scholar.
But he's also not pointed in that direction.
No. And we see this over and over with these people. This is my objection to conspiracy theorists. There are conspiracies. You could make the argument that this whole COVID thing with the gain of function research was to an extent a conspiracy. The problem is, just because that was a conspiracy doesn't mean everything is a conspiracy. Yes. And no, Bryce, young man, young, very mistaken young man, all the historians at Harvard, Oxford, and every other institution of higher learning who spend 5 and 10 years researching, then writing a book, they are not all wrong, and you are not right, young man. You're not.
And now he's dealing with the repercussions.
Well,
because freedom of speech, and
that's how you learn.
And you're like, okay, bud, get ready. Because now the UFC, there's gonna be no repercussions. The UFC's not gonna do anything. They're gonna do nothing.
No. And to Dana's part, and I agree with him, it's called freedom of speech. Now
back in the day, it wasn't always like this until the whole Trump wave came. Back in the day, there's been fighters that said some horrible shit or tweeted some horrible shit and got fired, lost their job.
Yeah.
And then now it's kind of this shift in momentum with the whole, they're pro-Trump and freedom of speech. And this is what I was saying on the Schaub show. It's freedom of speech if you push their agenda.
Yeah.
Because freedom of speech would have guys who aren't on board with everything Dana's doing in the press conference.
Yeah.
Those guys are banned from the press conference. So you have a group of 30 people with press credentials they know damn well what they can and can't say.
Right.
Well, that's not freedom of speech. So again, they run on this freedom of speech, but it's really not. It's really not.
So two good examples of watching people who think they're smart, who can do their own research and arrive at their own conclusion. Yeah, that would be one. The other is watch Terrence Howard try to pull one over on Eric Weinstein, who has his PhD in theoretical math from, I believe, MIT or it's Harvard. Watch Terrence Howard, who comes along and says 1 times 1 doesn't equal 1. Watch what Eric Weinstein does to Terrence Howard, an actor.
The good thing, he was nice to him.
He was very nice to him.
Yeah. But he bullied him. He bodied him.
Well, because finally Terrence Howard went, I remember he said, "I'm listening. I'm a student."
He's out of his element.
And because Eric said, you are. There are guys that would really make you look stupid. It's no different, Brendan, no different than a guy who's never fought, who gets into a ring with Floyd Mayweather.
Correct.
Or with it's
Correct.
no different.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you go, like, you've had this experience with somebody.
Mentally.
It's like the guy was like, "How are you doing this to me?"
Yeah.
Well, bro, because you have no idea what jiu-jitsu is. You've never done this.
Also, you don't speak this language.
It's
Like,
so
Bryce doesn't
shocking to
speak that
guys,
language.
right? So it's so shocking to guys when they've never spoken that language and they think they've done their own fighting research and they get tapped with shit they don't even know. They don't like. You don't even see that Darce coming. You don't know what the fuck is going on.
B,
Right?
let me ask you this: what would you do if fighters were doing that?
Well, exactly what Dana White's doing.
Interesting.
I wouldn't fire him. Well, I'll get to that. One more thing just to watch if you want to see somebody get bodied is this guy, Billy Carson, who studies ancient wisdom and was talking about how in the Sinai Bible, he didn't know where Sinai was, but he said in the Sinai Bible, they say Jesus wasn't crucified, and he took on a PhD in theology named Wes Huff, who did Rogan's podcast. And Wes Huff has read all the original manuscripts, like in the original languages. He's also a linguist. And this guy had all these conclusions, Billy Carson. And what Wes said is, you're referring to what's called he mentioned the text and he goes, yeah, that's what it is. He goes, now that's a known forgery.
Yeah.
It's a known forgery, and here's why. Eesh. And he broke it down. And this guy
Was the guy cool? Or
he got so bodied that he's like the videos that were made after that on the internet.
Yeah. Like
they were like, bro,
Bryce getting destroyed.
Well, because that's what happens. You should.
Whenever you say you want to hunt with Hitler and he wasn't a bad guy, like, yeah, dude, you're going to get dog walked online.
Here's what I would do. You represent my company. You said something because you're truly ignorant and maybe not, and certainly not educated. Okay, you have a podcast, you did that. I don't know in good conscience if I can fire you for what you said because that's speech. They have. Before. I understand that Dana White is disgusted and said, but it's still free speech. So I would say something that I'd probably say what Dana said. And then, ready for this? I'd have to pair him up with a murderer.
You know what I would do? You know what I would do? I wouldn't fire him. I don't want guys to lose their ability to make money. I would suspend him for 1 year. I'd say Bryce gets a year suspension. When he comes back, you better be ready. And I'd toss him a fucking killer.
Okay, but when you suspend him, like, what you might do then is galvanize a following for this kid and martyr him in one way or another. So in other words, I don't know that you would even need to do that right now. I think the internet's going to do that for you, and I also think
it's a good protocol for your company that has shareholders, and I think it's a good protocol when the leader of your company, Ari Emanuel, is super Jewish.
100%, but. Isn't there
so the reason Dana came out
educating him, right? Like, is there
do both,
that?
but also we can't have it. Listen, it's freedom of speech, but we can't have this.
Yeah.
Because any other league, imagine if Josh Allen said this. What do you think happens?
You tell me. I wouldn't know.
Oh, he'd be fined 7 figures and would miss 3 to 6 games.
So he would be suspended.
There's no job in America he wouldn't be suspended or fined.
Yeah.
The UFC is the only major organization. I just think it should set a standard with we're freedom of speech, but also if you're going to say some wild shit like that, we can't. Like we can't condone.
Here's the problem.
We can't condone that.
Here's the problem.
You don't fire him.
What if somebody is very religious and they say something that could be considered anti-gay marriage? You know what I mean? We're getting into these things. So now you're like, well, it's okay to do that, but not if you talk about Nazis, right? And so
this is where freedom of speech gets tough.
That's why I think Dana's approach is better, because you let somebody, give them rope, they're gonna hang themselves, they're gonna have to deal with all that shit. Now you're gonna fight a killer, you're gonna get in there, and he's gonna have to deal with all these repercussions in one way.
I think it's tough because then Conor goes out there and says the N-word. And then Marvin Vittori just said the N-word too on Twitter. So
he did?
Yeah.
So you're Italian, bro. What's that about?
I don't know. So I don't know what you do, but the freedom of speech thing, Yes, it's good, and it's what makes.
Are you a freedom? Are you an absolutist like Elon Musk, or do you have caveats? This is
the issue is if
it's a corporation and you have shareholders.
It's tough because you want to be taken serious. Like, again, any other major league, MLS, WNBA, NBA, NFL, MLB, anyone says this,
but the
no
UFC
matter how
came out
good
and
you
made a
are,
statement that said, this guy is so dumb, and I'm so disgusted.
And if you want to see him, pay $79.99 and watch him get his ass whipped if you don't like it.
Well, there's going to be a lot of that.